We're live.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to IncrediChat with me, Mike Lopez, and my good Michael Graz. And tonight, our very special star is cartoonist, comic book artist, character designer, Scott Shaw, coming all the way from California to join us.
Hi there.
Hello. Thank you for joining us, Scott. So for the few out there who don't know who you are, just give us a little background on who you are, your work. That is probably the most popular that people know you for.
I would say right now, people probably know me best for drawing the first 4 issues ever of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay.
Because the kids that bought that are now kind of starting to approach middle age, so there are probably more of them than remember. The other thing in comics that people know me for was a strip called Captain Carrot and His Amazing Zoo Crew that Roy Thomas and I made.
Yes.
But then I've also worked on a lot of TV shows. I produced and directed Martin Short's The Completely Mental Misadventures of Ed Grimley and John Candy's Camp Candy. And I've also done an awful lot of work on the Flintstones over the years, including making a lot of children diabetic, eating pebbles.
Working on the cereals.
And now Karma is truly a bitch because I'm diabetic, but my numbers are nice and low, so don't
That's
worry.
good. I'm happy to hear that.
I never eat that stuff.
Oh, I love that stuff as a kid. I actually, instead of making Rice Krispies treat, used to use Fruity Pebbles as the cereal instead of Rice Krispies.
You know, the problem is
what?
You get, after a kid, I think, enjoys the milk flavor as much as anything and the color.
Mm-hmm.
Cocoa Pebbles, it's nice and it tastes like chocolate, kind of. The milk after Fruity Pebbles is gray.
Yes.
You don't want to eat gray milk. That's like acid rain, It's like stay away from that.
I'm not gonna lie. I've been eating it with my son for the last few weeks. On it, so we bought a couple of boxes.
Well, I'd say you'd be better off eating those boxes. Don't let this happen to you. This is horrible.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, the health stuff is important, and but I gotta say, I love those commercials as a kid, and not just the Fruity Pebbles. I was a big commercial guy, of all the stuff. They told us fun stories as kids. Now with the whole, I don't remember when it started, but changing up you can't officially sell sugary snacks to kids on TV anymore.
Yeah. It's all much more soft-pedaled now, but my point was always, let's make them funny. The Flintstones hadn't been funny in years. We had a budget to make one of those commercials that was more than an episode of Camp Candy. I had a decent schedule. I was really, everybody trusted me. I had a letter from Bill Hanna that said, if Scott Shaw does it, it's approved. So people tended to listen to me. So I really, I could have been selling Flintstones nerve gas, and I would have. I was having such a good time and working with, I think I was the last person to hire Gene Vanderpyle as well, not the last person to hire John Stevenson as Mr. Slade. I mean, I got to work with a lot of the original people too, which for me was gas.
That's awesome.
I mean, I'll have to say,
almost gave me gas, so it all worked out.
my favorite Fruity Pebbles commercial is the Christmas one.
Oh, not the one
Readings in Our Souls.
Fruity Licious Do. That's not mine.
You didn't do that one?
No, I did the replacement for it because people hated it so much.
Oh, really?
Or we
I'm hungry.
You know who did that voice was Parley Bayer, the guy that used to play the mayor on the Andy Griffith show.
Oh, really?
He played like a kind of shifty politician, guys with no phone.
Oh, so
a new one, and I forget who did the Santa in that one. But I did one that was, it was essentially a Christmas Carol in 30 seconds. It was pretty spectacular, but they didn't mention Fruity Licious Dude.
There's the Bedrock Rapper. I remember that one.
That one was mine.
Oh gosh, there's so many.
Yeah, because as you can see, I'm certainly tied into that whole rap.
Awesome. So, I mean, I guess, and Grazi and I were talking about this earlier too, and I know you guys talked about it. So we're talking the Flintstones. What was your inspiration to become a cartoonist? Get into drawing funny characters.
Well, I was a little kid when comics were considered to turn children into devils, and yet in the 1950s they were burning comics.
Yeah.
And that a guy named Frederick Wortham had this book that was kind of set up, but it said that turned children into dupes. And a lot of people believed it. But my parents bought me a lot of comics, and I think it was just because I was visually excited, and they were in everywhere. You could get them in Sears Roebuck store. So, and in those days, you kind of automatically, if you were a kid, you got a subscription to Walt Disney Comics and Stories. So I was exposed to some really good cartooning, and I remember very specifically sitting down with an issue of New Funnies with Woody Woodpecker as the lead character, and he was running like a short order diner out in the middle of the desert, and I was looking, and there was this drawing of a piece of pond, and I thought, that's just two triangles drawn kind of side by side, and I remember sitting there and copying that thing out and figuring it out, and I just started teaching myself how to draw.
Wow.
And the older I got into elementary school, I would start charging my buddies for, and you'll see some stuff later by Orlando Bucino, who did this comic called Bats. He drew like funny monster stuff. And of course, living in San Diego, I also learned how to draw funny surfer stuff. And that stuff I charged, 3 cents, 5 cents for the whole Wolfman, but just 3 cents for the head. And then this was back when comics were still a dime. So then I could buy myself more comics, which meant more reference, teaching myself how to draw more stuff. And even though I started to get interested in superheroes and that stuff, I always never lost interest in the funny stuff. I mean, I used to get beaten up for buying Little Boo. Oh, that's a good comic for girls. Oh, no, if you read it, you realize it's just funny. And Sugar and Spike and Little Archie, certainly all the Carl Barks stuff. So, I mean, I was kind of in the era where comics for kids were still really good. And so it's like going to school and learning from the best guys out there. And then, I was obsessed with cartooning, and I was obsessed with Dynasty, paleontology. And of course, by that time, I watched a lot of TV cartoons too, but at that time, it was mostly just Popeyes and Warner Brothers stuff from a certain period, farmer alfalfa and stuff that nobody cared about at all anymore. And I was just kind of sick of it. So by the late 50s, Hanna-Barbera and Jay Ward started putting their stuff out, and it was like the cavalry. That suddenly made me really want to work on this cartoon show. And by 1960, they were advertising this thing was going to be coming out, and even Hanna-Barbera promoted it. It's kind of like the Honeymooners, but they're paved in. And, between the paleontology and already loving Rough and Ready and Nothing to Nobody and those characters, the top of my head just came off. And I, even though I was 9 years old, and smart enough to know that there's millions of kids out there watching, I kind of felt like this was like a gift from Hanna-Barbera directly. And I mean, Fred looked like my dad, and Blue stacked like my dad, and there were just, and I love the dinosaur designs, and I love watching them on MeTV now. The steam, the gas kind of runs out of the Flintstones about halfway through the second season in terms of being funny and innovative, but still, everybody loves those characters, and it had a huge influence on me. And I remember sitting there the first night it was on, and I'm leaning toward them, but my nose is about 60 inches away from the black and white screen. And I'm saying to myself, I'm going to work on that stuff. Now, I didn't know they would still be around, but I graduated high school when I was 26. By the time I was 24, I was working on the Flintstones. So my life is wonderfully linear. I mean, everybody's had some bad blips in their lives, and I'm different, but I mean, in terms of getting exactly who I wanted to work with and getting my gift, I never got to work with Jay Ward. I had an offer to work there when I was in high school.
Oh wow.
I was only 15. I couldn't move up to LA by myself and live in the street while I worked for free at Jay Ward. But I would have wound up working on George of the Jungle.
Oh, that would have been great.
Classic show.
Yeah.
And the Quisp and Quake commercials, which are my favorite commercials.
I love them too.
That's one of the things that's my big inspiration for double spots. I kept wanting to look, make one of these serials Barney and one of them Fred, and them stealing from each other, having competing with each other, because that's a whole more interesting dynamic that is a much wider vector of gimmicks.
Yeah.
So they never went for it. They didn't know I was ripping off Quaker Oats, but just the idea of competing characters that are essentially on the same product, pretty fiendishly smart.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the Flintstones. I think the last thing I worked on was a pitch for that really horrible one that got canceled from Netflix. It was my idea, and the version I did not look like the Blam.
Cave Kids, you're talking, or Cave Kids or something like that.
Well, they have a Cave Kids thing.
Oh, yeah, Yabba Dabba Dinosaurs.
Yabba Dabba Dinosaurs was just when I was given it to work on, they designed them to look like anime characters, and the dinosaurs all look like Pokemon. And I thought, you guys are really underestimating how smart kids are, because they're going to. I mean, they still got Pokemon around. They don't need to disguise the Flintstones as Pokemon because you don't know how to sell the Flintstones. But they don't seem to know how to sell any of those characters. I mean, they've been playing around with those new Warner's cartoons they promised us 3 years ago, and the one I saw wasn't. I think it was Daffy running around, but he wasn't funny. I mean, he was going mindlessly berserk, but it was the gag needs a point to be funny. I think it's not just But we'll see. But I'll tell you, Warner Brothers is. I think they're chasing a dream, because to have that work the same way it did in the best Warner's cartoons, you've got to have that chemistry. You've got to have the vibe of the studio. And believe me, Warner Brothers is not the place where you go, hey, that's what we go to. Have fun. No, it's really Warner Brothers. They make Disney look like a playground.
Interesting. Let me ask you: have you seen the image about the new Jellystone cartoon, and your thoughts on that?
Haven't seen a thing about it. No, I'm not on their mailing list. Sorry.
All right, I'll try to pull one up when we go to the internet.
That really is the thing. I mean, I'm so lucky because I got to do so much on all the Hanna-Barbera characters that I liked, and even quite a bit on some of them I didn't like. I got that itch scratched pretty well. And I hate to say it, but it's kind of hard to turn off my, that looks off, and geez, I wouldn't have done it that way. And it's like, okay, I'm an a-hole, but you can't help it when you train yourself to be good in a certain way, and then other people are taking it in another direction. So we'll see. I mean, it's Warner Brothers. They're characters, and I wish them luck, because I'd like to have some funny stuff out there.
Yeah. Now, I have a question in regards to the Flintstones and Fruity Pebbles. I was always curious. Obviously, in all the incarnations of the Flintstones, Fred and Barney have this really buddy relationship. But in the Fruity Pebbles commercials, their relationship is kind of different. Is there a story behind that, or it was just, like you said, trying to model off of those old commercials? What did Hanna-Barbera think of that?
Well, I mean, quite honestly, even if you look at the Flintstones, the original shows, Barney is stupider than Fred, up to the point Mel Blanc had that car accident.
Yeah.
He had Dawes Butler come in and do it for, I don't know, a couple of 3 or 4 episodes a week. And he played him a little more intelligently, played him more directly like Art Carney. And which, both Yogi Bear and Barney Rubble are based right off of Art Carney. On the and from that point on, when Mel started doing them, then he matched the one that Dawes was doing, which was considerably smarter. Now, when I worked with Jeff Bergman, we did one episode, I think, where I had him do Barney because it was like a flashback. I said, "Do the stupid Barney." He could do it perfect. But I think in the commercials, the real key is they liked having them stealing. They liked having Barney stealing. And I one time asked one of the executroids that was in charge of research and focus group with kids sort of thing, which quite honestly, having sat in a lot of those, it's absolute nonsense. There's always one kid that was a smart kid in the mouth, and everybody else goes, yeah, well, I don't get mixed in. But they said that kids liked these commercials because they had told them repeatedly, focus group, now get this, that if something is really good, it's worth stealing.
Oh wow.
Okay.
So let's sell some cars, let's sell some jewelry, let's have everything being stolen. I mean, it's like, and they're all for it too. That's the other thing. It's like, well, doesn't that kind of bother you a little bit?
They're thieves.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's not much of an answer, but that's the only answer I ever got.
Yeah, no, it was always interesting to see, again, watching, like, especially around the time when those commercials were on. I mean, they are the most recent Flintstone things were obviously the Flintstone comedy show, the early 80s shows were like the Frankenstones and all that. And then later on were like the Jetsons meet the Flintstones, but that was really it. And the later movies, but Fred and Barney had a much different relationship in what you were seeing than on those commercials.
Yeah,
I was always just...
But in the early shows, I mean, Fred's threatening to kill Barney half the time. So
yeah.
Yes.
That's Barney, my pebbles. I actually one time didn't have any money, but I wanted to make the client like me a lot. So I said, you know what? Just give me some time. And, the bay, the edit bay. I can make you a spot for almost nothing. We'll have to pay the voice people. That's about it. And all I did was take Barney, my pebbles, and I took them out of I didn't know, one that was all from Cocoa Pebbles, one all Fruity Pebbles, put it to like a scratching type thing, and but Barney, my pebbles, and it went over the top from there.
Wow.
Because they'd sold a lot because it was strictly just that Fred blowing his stack and saying pebbles over and over. I figured they're going to love it because it sells the cereal. It's just that cereal moment. But I love it just because it's Fred getting pissed off. And apparently kids were a little scared of Fred because I guess it was a little too angry some of the time. But I thought, well, then it's not Fred. I also one time had one of the executives there make a comment that I couldn't have a gag. Fred was doing something and something broke down underneath him because he was fat and fell down. They said, you can't mention that he's fat. I said, he is fat. Look at him. He's fat. I'm fat. And the kids that are reading this are fat. So just get used to it. That was the thing. Being a cartoonist around people that were these kind of successful CPAs that had no idea how a cartoon was made, they looked at me like I was some sort of nutty wizard. So as long as I didn't come in there smoking a bomb or with my junk hanging out, they thought, oh, well, he's just kind of an eccentric cartoon. So I milked that. We all kind of wear in our jobs kind of a mask. That was my mask around the studio. Was I'm safely in the thing. Oh, we like that.
All right, so let's
not safely in the thing.
Let's just take a quick moment to say hi to some of our guests out here, and then Mike, if you want to pull up some of the questions, we'll say hey to our good friend Joe Ryan, who's always here with us, Ronaldo Pizarro, I'm going to struggle with this name, but Zajan DeMonkey. They say Scott Ye. Hello to Neri. Our good friend Neri is watching us today. Okay. The folks over at Alternaverse. And how about Razia? Let's pull up that first question from Pat. And I don't know the answer to this, but Pat's question come on up.
Oh, hi, Pat.
Hi. Did you get to work on the Jetsons Meet the Flintstones?
Fortunately, no, but I did work on some of the publicity art.
Okay.
The publicity art, I didn't even have a copy of what I was trying to imitate. But when the Jetsons came out, they ran an ad that had the Flintstones waving up at the Jetsons guide, a full-page ad. And I'd always clip those because that's another way I learned how to draw those characters. And it was like, oh man, this has got the new one and the good ones too. So I did the same sort of thing, and I didn't really quite get the same layout, but I did 2 or 3 things like that that were all intended to kind of signal the original acknowledgement by the Flintstones.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of just move on quick. I'm sure we'll come back to the Flintstones and other Hanna-Barbera stuff, but I wanted to actually talk to you about San Diego Comic-Con. You're one of the founding members of that con.
Yes, I am.
How did that come to be?
Well, there were a lot of fans in San Diego, a lot of nerds, and I was part of a group that kind of came out of Crawford High in San Diego. The science fiction author Greg Bear was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
The physicist, physics author Roger Friedman was part of it. John Pound, the guy that did a lot of the Garbage Pail Kids cards, that sort of thing, he was one of us. And we all wanted to be writers and artists and creative people. And when I went to college, I wound up meeting a fellow named Ken Kruger, who lived here, who had a shop in college, and it was all science fiction books and in the back room pornography. That's how guys that sold science fiction was by selling pornography on the back. But he was a really good guy. He was Ken Kruger, and he was one of the actual co-founders because he was one of the only adult that actually understood how to set up a convention, how to sign a contract with a hotel, all that sort of stuff. But anyway, when we met him, we kind of all coalesced with some other fans and created our own little fan group. Then I found out I was working at a B. Dalton bookseller. I met somebody from a different group from across town who were all dealers and collectors. So when we all got together, that's when that recipe really worked, and we started talking about making a comic con. I'd already been to the World Science Fiction Convention in '68 in Berkeley, California, so you can imagine. I mean, I was like a very straight kid, and I came out holding my head. It was like, what have I seen? But it was really eye-opening because in addition to all the counterculture stuff there, it was the fact that, geez, the fandom is like a big deal. You know, there were thousands of people, and the biggest shock I remember was seeing guys that looked like my dad, but standing around like in weird jumpsuits, smoking pipes with the shape of aliens. Holy crap. It's not just kids like me that like this stuff. It's weird old men. Weird old men of 35, probably. But anyway, that really got us going. And we had a little one-day con early in 1970, and that went over well with a few. I think Forey Ackerman was our big guest. And we had Mike Royer, who was just starting to be the assistant on Tarzan, the Tarzan Daily Strip. He had inked any Jack Kirby yet. And a local editorial cartoonist. And from there, we went to a 3-day one. Both were in the basement of the dumpiest hotel in downtown San Diego. We had a big problem finding a hotel because they all said, well, it's just all going to be kids. We won't have a bar tab, so we can't make any money on it. And Kruger went in there and kind of finessed things. We also, the 3 guys responsible, one was a guy that had a lot of contacts in the business. One guy was Richard Alf, who was actually a comic book dealer in that other group who was dealing through mail order. And he loaned the convention $2,000 seed money, which in 1970 was like a lot of money. And he was, I think, he was a year younger than me, so I think he was only 16. But he was really good with numbers. Yeah, he was really good with numbers. So those 3 guys, between one guy with the contacts, one guy with the know-how, and one guy with the money, that's why we consider them the 3 co-founders. For a long time, just the guy with the contacts was taking credit for it, and we said, no, you know, he wouldn't accept it back in the early days. But it was like, no, now that everybody's dead, we can say there were 3 guys. And I'm not glad they're dead, but, you know, I mean, it's like, it was ridiculous. So the claiming the term founder got to the point where I found that term actually sick. But because I never claimed to be the founder, none of us did. We were all doing it together as far as we thought. Yeah. But anyway, it took off really fast, and Jack Kirby was one of our first special guests. Carmine Infantino was one of the early years. But the big thing was when we had Neil Adams as the guest. because Jack was already living out here, and even though he gave us a glowing review and had a lot of faith, he actually predicted it would become the huge monster media show it is now. But at the time, Neil was still living in New York, and when he went back and told everybody that, hey, if you play your cards right, you might get invited to San Diego, and then you can tax deduct a family vacation. And none of us realized this. First of all, growing up in San Diego, you just kind of say, hey, we're in San Diego. You kind of forget that you're in a tourist place and that it's a tourist place for a reason, because it's a really nice town. There's a lot of great stuff to see. And you kind of can, if you're living back east, you certainly can get away from it all. I don't know if you guys have been out, but it's still a nice town.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance yet.
But back then, it wasn't over. Downtown was still nice and dumpy. It was great. I mean, it was cheap to visit. But we never thought about that. But San Diego itself was, I think, a key element in the fact that it grew so quickly. Because by the 80s, it was already, 5,000 people or something. And every year it was picking up 3 or 4 more thousand. And now I think it's 250,000. But I was only really involved with it when I still lived in San Diego. I moved up there instead. I moved from San Diego to LA, because I was getting a lot of freelance work, and I was doing underground comics, but I wanted to work in animation. So I took a job running a comic book store about 2 miles down the street from Hanna-Barbera, figuring, first of all, as friends of mine owned it, I had my studio in the back. I was actually, by that time, starting to get work from Hanna-Barbera on those Marvel comics. The ones from the 70s.
Yeah.
Yes, there you go. I did that cover.
There you go.
There we go.
And the Snagglepuss story inside, too.
And it's based on me covering myself with peanut butter at the World Science Fiction.
That's a story I think you may want to have to share with us.
That was based on my first underground character named the Turd. And he came out of the sewers, and then we were at the convention in 72, and I thought, well, hey, I was reading a lot of Hunter Thompson and reading about Dada art and performance art. And I thought, well, let's just go for it, do something really, really disgusting. And it wound up ruining all the plumbing in the hotel. So there he is. Yeah. That's not the Turd, but a close facsimile. I drew him and that guy. But anyway, the American Comic Book Company led to working for Hanna-Barbera. So I enjoyed working in a comic shop. That's where I met Roy Thomas, which obviously led to the What If that I did with Man Spider, which then led to doing Captain Carrot with Roy. That's where I met Steve Gerber. That's where I met Bob Kane, who's the biggest jerk in the world of comics ever. He came in, this was 1978. And I was excited to meet Bob Kane because I loved the Golden Age Batman, especially Dick Sprang's work. I've always thought that Dick Tracy-looking stuff was the best Batman ever looked.
Yeah.
No offense to Neil. But he came in, and I thought, well, I'm going to impress this guy. I'm going to say, boy, I really love Batman. Nice to meet you, Mr. Kane. I especially love the ones from the 40s that you worked on with Dick Sprang. I didn't say that he ghosted for you, even though I knew that was the case. I thought I didn't have a lot of finesse, but I was growing a little. And he looked at me and he said, who's Dick Sprang? And it was like, it wasn't that inside at that point. A lot of people knew that Dick Sprang through that stuff. I think DC was even mentioning him in the reprints some of the time. And he just hung to the fact that, no, I must be mistaken. It was somebody else. And I remember when he first came in, he said, my name's Bob Kane. I bet you're excited to meet me. It's like, he really was that kind of guy.
Wow.
I mean, my stories are pale to the ones where he was, for example, trying to direct the director when he was the guest star on that new art show where they had all the cartoonists on. Remember?
Yeah, met with Mad Dog.
Yeah, the second Bob.
Bob. It was called Bob.
Just Bob, yeah. All the cartoonists showed up. Jack Kirby was there. A lot of the guys from Image were there. Bob Kane acted like he was the king. Like it was like having Milton Berle on the set. They just wanted to kill him. But anyway, that was my transition to Hanna-Barbera. But the comic shop and the convention and stuff, that all kind of gave me a insight and connections. And I don't think that would happen now nearly as much because it's just all gotten big and everybody's scrambling. Everybody thinks it's the greatest job in the world, which if you can do it, it is, but it isn't necessarily lead to fame and fortune like a lot of people think.
I do have one more question about San Diego, because one of my favorite things to do on YouTube is watch other artists draw, and this has gone into other shows, but you, Mark Evanier, and Sergio Aragone started the Quick Draws, right?
Yeah, I know Marvel's appropriated the name Quick Draw for people drawing somebody with beautiful hair.
Yeah. But can you explain how that came to be?
I don't quite remember, other than the fact that we've been friends for years. I mean, I met Mark at Jack Kirby's house in 1970. And I met Sergio at Comic-Con, I think, in 71 or 72.
Okay.
And we've been friends for years. And I mean, when cartoonists get together, I mean, it's, we don't have to call it drink and draw, but if you're sitting at a table together, you're drawing on a napkin together or something.
Yeah.
It just kind of came out of that. It's
okay.
Like, who was it? Harvey Kurtzman used to like to get people playing that tick-attack where you draw half of a character and then you fold it over and somebody else has to draw the other half without seeing what it is.
Yeah.
And I think Art Spiegelman even published a whole book of stuff like that. But I mean, cartoonists love playing games.
Yeah. Yeah. I do that with my friends too. So.
I mean, if one of us stalls, we don't care if the other guy's funnier than we are. I mean, it's not like a real competition. It's about as much a competition as you bet your life. It's like remember the old Groucho show. Nobody knew what the rules were. We just wanted to see Groucho. Same thing here. We just want to see Sergio. I'm the parsley on the plate. He's the steak. I'm not very tasty, but really caliente.
A couple of questions.
Yeah, I was gonna go. We got a Joe Ryan who's our loyal follower, and he says, "Do studios still hire 2D animation? And if so, are they looking for interns of 2D artists? I'm an indie comic artist with hopes of one day breaking into the animation industry. Any feedback would be appreciated."
My phone's not ringing much these days from the studios. And I don't really know what they're looking for other than they want people who are young and malleable and willing to ignore the union rules and sleep under the chairs and work all night, probably. I really don't know the situation. I would say you're better off making your own cartoons and posting them on YouTube and let somebody notice you rather than you hoping that they're going to accept you. Get your own following first.
Yeah.
We didn't have that opportunity when I was a kid. That you guys can now. And I mean, for example, I worked on the TV series Annoying Orange for 2 years. That was all based on an internet show that some kid makes. At the time, it was making practically in his basement. And he wound up getting a TV show out of it. Now, of course, if you're on YouTube and you get enough hits, you can make a living just from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, quite honestly, screw the studios. They're just gonna, wear you out and make you angry. Be your own studio. I mean, that sounds crazy. If I could do it, I'd be doing it too. I do my own writing, draw my own stories, but that's an awful lot of work. But if you're young, you have the energy to do it.
Yeah.
Your own studio, please.
I actually just to add to that, I remember watching a video on YouTube. I don't even know how many years ago, but it was Ralph Bakshi at one of the San Diego Comic Cons, and he was like
pickpocketing demonstration.
No. This was him like talking to animators, and he was like, "What? Why do you got to work for a studio?" He's like, "You got to make the money to buy fancy pants." He's like, "You guys could buy a computer with all this stuff, do it yourself, spend a year living off pizza or whatever in your garage, make an anime, and then you could sell it." I don't think he was thinking YouTube at the time, but he was like, then you could sell it to HBO or whatever's out there and make the DVDs. I mean, we're going more than 10 years, I think, now.
Yeah,
but
well, I wouldn't be real interested in accepting advice from a guy that ripped off Von Bodé in Hollywood. I mean, seriously, Ralph Bakshi is devoid of any ethics whatsoever.
Okay.
He's a good cartoonist. But instead of creating his own stuff, he relied on ripping off other people. So screw Ralph Bakshi, please.
Okay. I'm just giving the advice I saw on the YouTube.
No, I'm giving you advice. Don't ever go up to Ralph and think that you can show him your work, because it might not be your work anymore.
There you go.
I'm not making a subject.
No, I don't. I've known people who've gone to colleges in New York City, like FIT, and their teachers have stolen their work. You know, it's a very common practice.
Yeah, but they didn't make feature films out of it.
Gotcha.
No, yes. But they did make clothes out of them. So.
Let's go to Corey's question. Pull that up.
Corey, do I have Corey on here? Oh, Corey, right here. Could you please talk about Gene Hazleton?
Yeah, Gene Hazleton was a cartoonist that I was very fortunate to be mentored by. He was living in San Diego when I was a teenager. And he started out as a assistant to Jimmy Hatlow on They'll Do It Every Time back in the 30s, I think. And then he wound up getting a job with Disney, and then I think Warner's, and then maybe Warner's. He designed the characters in the ever offensive Coal Black and Seven Dwarves. And then he went over to MGM, and he was the one guy that nobody would assign to a unit. He was so popular and so talented. Anyway, after he left MGM, he wound up doing comic strips, and he did his own thing called Angel Face. And then he wound up doing the Flintstones and the Yogi Bear comics.
Okay.
And he was just a very nice man. Like a lot of cartoonists his age, he loved to golf, so he bought a house that was literally right on the edge of a golf course where he could walk out his back door and be on the golf course. Not a goal of mine, but he was an eccentric in his own way. But he was really, really good. He only drew one comic book ever. It was a comic called Kid Carrots for Ben Sullivan, the original editor of DC. And he told me, I said, why only one? He said, that was so much work. He said, I've never done that much work in my life. And here's a guy that did two daily comics. So to him, doing comics was hard. But he'd have me over and he'd talk about what he was doing. He'd draw the stuff on vellum and then he'd transfer it with a whiteboard to a Bristol board and like 2-ply so you could see it. And he would give me all the sketches from the vellums to take home and study.
Wow.
And he wasn't training me to draw the Flintstones. I wasn't at the time. I mean, that was just too far over my head. I was still a junior in high school.
Yeah.
And he was one of my mentors. The other guy was a fellow named Bernie Lansky. And Bernie would meet me at the Jewish Community Center on my way home from school every Thursday afternoon. And he wanted to see my latest cartoons. And he was another guy that had been in the business for years. Not in animation, but he did editorial cartoons and commercial art. And he had a couple of strips. One was called 17, about a kid named Sheldon. And he had a style that was kind of like that gag cartoon. But he had a German name. I can't think of it. But one of the best, a gag cartoon with a very loose style, kind of beyond Hank Ketchum loose.
Okay.
And so, I never liked the style that much. I liked stuff that had a little more structure to it. But he was a great, great guy too. And I was friends with both of them until they died. They were very relieved that all the time they spent with me wasn't a waste of time. So those are the two guys I worked with when I was a kid. And Gene was somebody that, you mention him and all the animators go, oh, because he was real.
Yeah. Just because you're talking about the some of the old timers there that you've known, let's talk about Jack Kirby. He's one of your influences, right? And you said you met Mark at his house. So I've heard stories about people going to hang out at his house and you guys just kind of hanging out. Did you do that often, or were you just kind of once in a while?
We should all be glad that Charlie Manson never showed up at Jack's house, or Jack would have invited him and the entire family, because they were just that nice. He invited us to come by, and I certainly assumed that it was just going to be kind of for a little hello there. I did the same thing once with Carl Barks, so I went to visit him.
That's awesome. I'm a huge Barks fan myself.
Hanna-Barbera, and he wound up keeping me there for the whole day. It was like, really, you're interested in me too? But Jack was very open, very. I remember the thing he kept telling all of us. I mean, a couple of us. John Pound was there too. Was he kept saying, "Draw it your way. Don't try to imitate me. Draw it the way you think it should look," which was a big deal. I mean, nobody ever. I mean, I didn't know what my stuff looked like a chimp on it, but he was telling me, stay the course. Now, don't have any. Just because you don't like the way your work looks, stick with it and it'll get better. That's real. He also told me he liked underground comics. Now that was not a good thing because I thought that he meant that he really liked reading underground comics and all the things that were in underground comics, a lot of sex and rock and roll. And no, what he liked was the fact that artists got a decent page rate, $50 a page. They owned it themselves, and they didn't have to draw on a house stock. That was why he liked it. But instead, I decided, in honor of Jack, I would do this really pretty poster and have it printed up and give him a copy. And we won't go into what it looked like, but it was very phallic. And Jack was kind of like, well, I've never seen Jack at a loss for words before or since then. But he was just kind of stunned. And finally, I realized, no, he's not going to hold it against me. He doesn't want a copy. He doesn't really want to even look at it. Yeah. But he come on by the house. One time, years later, he kidded me. He said, "You're a little worried about you, but now you're staying with the choir." I said, "Jack, I'm an atheist. I'm going to have to stay with the choir." Well, you know what I mean, damn it. But he was. I mean, if I'd had a kid do that to me, I'd probably say, "Call the police. Don't let them get near the house anymore." But he got us. He remembered what it was like to be a goofy kid, wanted to be a cartoon. That one of the earliest Comic Cons, my friend Terry Stroud had a Roman candle. And this was at the El Cortez, which essentially had it wasn't really an atrium, but it was kind of built around the pool. So you had a shot at the sky. But you also had 4 tall walls with people living in them around it. And we go out and we're going to shoot this Roman candle off. And Jack walks by, and I'll never forget, my friend says, he goes, "Come on, Jack, light it with your cigar."
Oh, boy.
Jack was still smoking a cigar, and he comes over, and you could tell. And I'm not, Jack still, he was like thinking, yeah, I should, be one of the boys again. You could see it in his eyes. And he went, "Oh, I don't." My buddy's trying to. Then he said, "Come on, Jack, it's the boom tube." I remember saying, and that's when Jack Kelly's kind of went, "No, I don't think I'm cajoled into doing this." But he wasn't a jokester. He was a serious guy. Loved, I think, to impart a bit of wisdom on something I'm incapable of doing. I'm sorry, but he had this sudden kind of gravitas out of nowhere where he'd, give you something that he thought would help you get through life. I mean, he really was that kind of guy. He was the opposite of Smile and Stan, and the fact that he never was flip about anything. And he really believed in Comic-Con a lot. He once said the Comic-Con is going to, the entire world will be coming there and Hollywood will be depending upon it. I mean, it was like Nostradamus of comics or something because it all came true. Not necessarily in a good way, but still. It's Comic-Con. I remember when you had to explain what Comic-Con was to people. Now it's on the cover of Entertainment Weekly as a sales tool.
Yeah.
Part of our society now.
I'm sorry, what, Mike?
That it's a part of our society.
Yeah, no, totally. We got a couple questions, but before we go to the questions, I want to ask you: is it true Jack drew you in one of his comics?
Oh, Jack drew me in 2 of his comics, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, although one of us he drew in a number of his comics. he told us when that first day, he said, he goes, I could put anybody in comics, even you guys. And then he kind of looked up, and we were all like this. Like, oh shit! I could see this kind of look past through his eyes, like, now I've got to do it. And so I don't know, 3 or 4 months later, Jimmy Olsen comes out, and he goes, San Diego 5-string mob. The typical Jack. There's a 6th member. And the 6th member, let me see, it was myself, Roger Friedman, the physicist, John Pound, the illustrator, Will Lund, who became an actor and writer, Mike Towery, who now runs the San Diego Comic Fest, and then the missing person was Barry Alfonso, who was Barry Boy. He was the only one that actually had a name, and he wound up being the character, or the person who was the basis for the character Witch Boy.
Okay.
In the Demon.
Yeah.
And he's been in cartoons and everything. And Barry is an author and music writer, and just wrote a big book about Rod McHugh and all. So, but we all got our little moment of fame in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, which is, by the way, one of my favorite oddball comic titles. I think I've got the majority of the issues.
Actually, we are going to get to your oddball comics. That's actually one of the questions in a moment. But first question we got, any stories regarding Harry Love?
Well, Harry Love was this guy that worked in animation. I think he probably started out in the Charles Minton studio back in the 30s.
Yep.
He had survived over the years, and he was at Hanna-Barbera, and he taught a class at night that involved usually him leading over the shoulder of most of the young women in the class. And it was never. I never heard of him being aggressively creepy, but it was obvious. The word went around. If you have a penis, there's no point in taking this class because he won't give you any attention whatsoever. So I think I took it once and realized that was true, and went elsewhere for advice. But the funniest thing to me about Harry was I would park myself in there occasionally there would be moments when there wasn't anything frantic going on. I liked hearing him talk about the history of animation. I liked hearing all those old timers talk about the history of animation, especially the ones that didn't drink themselves through it, which were considerable. But anytime he'd get a phone call, and it would be, he reported directly to Joe Barbera. And Joe was essentially the guy that created the shows and oversaw the creation of the shows. And Bill was the guy that had to make the shows once Joe sold them. And I think that's where the big division was on Laugh Olympics, where they suddenly had 47 regular characters.
Jeez.
And it just absolutely fractured the budget and everything. But anyway, Harry would make a big deal. They go, pick it up, and he'd go, like, yeah, his name's on the building, Harry. I report to him. But he used to act like, it's Dracula calling Renfield. It was,
Well, you mentioned the Laugh Olympics. I've again, another burning Hanna-Barbera question I've always had, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. So I've got some good Hanna-Barbera things here too. So Laugh Olympics.
There aren't many.
So Laugh Olympics, you had your 3 teams, and they brought out all these characters. The really rottens, with the exception of Mumbly, were all brand new characters. My question was on the Scooby Doobies. Do you know why they didn't have the full gang instead of having some of these other characters? I know Josie and the Pussycats and Jeannie were supposed to be on there, and early productions have them in there, but they got cut out.
I don't have an answer, but I have a very strong suspicion. Same reason Paul Lynde didn't do Mildew Wilson. It was all about voice acting. I had to get people that could do multiple characters. At the sessions, if you've got 47 regular characters, that means you've got 10 or 12 people in the booth to recording it at one time, which you can't do. Therefore, they had to find people to come up with stuff. And the other issue was they would have used, I thought you were going to ask why it wasn't Dick Dastardly and Muttley.
Oh, well, I mean, that's also a good. I know one of the comics explain it.
Well, the real reason behind that is because the game show company, was it Goodson, Todman Goodson or something like that?
They owned Wacky Racing.
Yeah, they owned a part of Wacky Racing. So it was originally designed. It wasn't even the original concept. They went into a deal with Hanna-Barbera to create the first interactive cartoon, where kids would call in and determine the ending.
Oh, wow.
But after they made the claim, they never could figure out a way to make it work. Therefore, they agreed to do Wacky Races, but about, okay, who's gonna win the race? But even that had to be predetermined because they didn't have the budget and schedule to make a bunch of alternate endings. And then how are you going to do it at at the last minute? So all those characters were created because they couldn't use any characters that they were original.
Okay.
Plus, they had to have characters that didn't exist before, so they could make whoever they had to hire. For example, Dawes Butler had some of those characters, and his, I don't know if he was making bigger money or not by that point. Probably not. But it was probably really a case of how can we figure this out to get the least number of people to cover all of it, and then they develop the characters around that. The other thing I find interesting, that has a hillbilly girl in it, and then a year later or two, they have Fred and Barney meet the Shmoo, and then it shows to me the one thing about that was that one of the many shows that was obvious, Joe Barbera was a huge Little Abner. Okay. Because there are a lot of things in there that rip off Little Abner without actually being all the way back to the. Of course, I imagine Hillbilly Bears as well. Yeah. To the Clampets, though.
Yeah.
Beverly Hillbillies, but still, you like that hillbilly theme a lot.
Sorry, what?
Hope that's enough.
I think it was a good answer. What do you think? You want more, Mike?
Well, I mean, I want to. I want to go talk a little bit more about a couple of other shows. One of them was Hanna-Barbera. One of them was not Hanna-Barbera.
Well, I'm sorry. I just accidentally posted one I was going to wait for. But Joe, I just want to say, Joe Ryan said solid advice. I appreciate your feedback. One time a Disney artist told me the very similar advice to get noticed. Your own thing. Well said. So, anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
I'm going to show off my animation. So if you want to give me the full thing here, because this is from one of my favorite shows as a kid.
Oh yeah. Hey, I signed it.
Well, yeah, I bought this online, and it was like, and then I got Marty to sign it too.
Somebody must have signed it over to you from me because I was originally the only person that wound up with all the cells from the main tiles, and I never knew what to do with it. Nobody asked.
Years ago, I mean, literally, like years ago, there was a guy that had a bunch of these online from the opening credits, and I was like, and he was selling them on eBay. And I was like, this is amazing, and it had your signature on it too. And then I met Martin Short at book signing, so I was like, absolutely need to have him sign it. But I would know. What's that?
What did he have to say about the show?
He didn't say much about it. I know you didn't work on Gravedale High, did you?
No, that was Rick Moranis' show.
Because when I met Rick Moranis, I have a cell from that, and Rick Moranis was like, wow, that didn't last long. And that was another one of those NBC programs.
But that was a show that wasn't based on anything other than they got his name on it.
Yeah. Which is funny because, and I mean, on the quick side, that is like kind of Monster High is a popular thing right now. And if you look back at that, that's really like what Monster High is that show. But Ed Grimley, how did that come about? I know it's almost like a cult favorite now. I know there was rumors after it went off. And again, this is me like in high school watching it. There was rumors that it was going to go to MTV for a while.
Yeah, so what happened? That would have been a bigger disaster because MTV didn't have any money. It would have been drawings on popsicle sticks moved around. But no, seriously, what happened was the Ed Grimley show existed because we were the year after Pee Wee Herman hit TV, and that year NBC had Ed Grimley, and CBS added Hey Vern, It's Ernest. So we suddenly had a lot of the nerds on TV. And the interesting thing about Ed Grimley was it was co-produced by Colossal Pictures in San Francisco.
Okay.
Because NBC specifically said we don't want another show that looks like the same old Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they were supposed to, kind of come through with the whole thing. But quite honestly, they didn't. They were kind of waiting for us, and we were waiting for them. So I just kind of jumped in on it. And quite honestly, I wasn't really the producer, but I was. We got to get going. We had a late pickup. This thing was going to go. I wasn't one of the writers. I don't even know what I was, but I was certainly one of the people that was working on the development of it. And I got one of our fellows, Kent Melton, a sculptor, designed Ed. I got Don Doherty to design some of the other characters, like the Gustav brothers, and the characters. I can't think of their names, but like the middle-aged couple that lives.
The Freebuses?
The Freebuses, yeah. And Don Doherty designed those, and some of the people at Colossal designed some of the other characters. I know Steve Purcell, the guy behind Sam and Max, who's now a director at Pixar, designed Miss Malone.
Okay.
And anyway, we kind of avoided the usual runaround at Hanna-Barbera. I know Will Takamoto and his crew had done a pitch for it that they never got to show anybody, and turned out there was actually a comic book designed by the guys at Marvel based on the pitch that wasn't sold.
And I remember hearing that. I remember reading that in the Star Comics, and I was like, awesome, more Ed Grimley's coming.
Yeah, well, they did get the John Candy, and John hated it so much he had me redraw the first issue without pay, so there you go.
Camp Candy.
Yeah.
I have that too.
Anyway, the Ed Grimley show, the story editor was Martin Short's brother, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, the first 6 episodes were a disaster because he hated the way the animation was coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't seem to understand that we really had no control over the studios beyond the storyboards, the character models, and we really didn't have the time to have planned how to do this stuff right. But he kept making movies, which was driving management crazy because he just disappeared to go shoot a film. They're like, but we have to deliver a show every week. No, that wasn't going to happen. So in the time between, I came up with a scheme on how to make it right. I had a number of different Ed Grimley poses drawn, and we assigned each of them a number, and then I would go over to his home and have him act out all the dialogue scenes, not where he's running around like a cartoon, just the stuff where he's really being Ed Grimley, making certain gestures.
Like these kind of poses.
Yes, exactly. And not to rotoscope him as much as say, hit this pose when he says this, and hit this pose when he does this. We put those in the exposure sheet. So the second half of the series, he loved them because I figured out a way and had a crew that could help me figure out a way to actually kind of have a little bit of that reference that rotoscoping would have without anybody having to go through because they wouldn't possibly slow down the process. But if they had those on the layouts or even glued to the exposure sheet, they would get it, and they did. The problem was by that time, him skipping all those episodes, NBC was absolutely furious with everybody involved.
Oh, wow.
Because they wanted a clean 13 or 17, whatever the number of episodes those were, in a row. Well, at that time, all the studios were screwing up. He put the second episode of Captain N, the Game Master, has an entire act that's just black and white pencil test.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
And Andy
I didn't realize that.
Head of Geek said something like, oh, the kids won't notice. Well, of course the kids are going to notice. What you should have done is, hey, kids, here's a look at what cartoons look like before we put the color on or something, right? Wouldn't that have made a little more sense? Quite the rip-off? Nah, he didn't care. He didn't care. Because he didn't want to run the same episode twice in a row. They thought kids would run away. But Saturday morning has improved tremendously in terms of everybody having a nice time, kind of buffer time between when it was supposed to be delivered and time for retakes and tweaking it and stuff. And if you notice the cartoons on now, they may not have much heart, but they definitely have better production.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're finally on top of that. Of course, they have to make their own animatics on every episode.
Yeah.
have to kind of make a cartoon before they make a cartoon, and that's now part of the job.
So because I mean, I guess one of the things I also really enjoyed about Ed Grimley too was that I was a big SCTV fan. So I mean, you had Joe Flaherty, you had Catherine O'Hara, you had Andrew Martin, so you had all these great people in that show too.
Well, you can imagine me, because SCTV was one of my favorite shows as well. So here I am working with all these people. I mean, they came into every recording session. Jonathan Winters was also part of the show.
He was the Mr. Freebus.
Somebody I'd worked with for a little bit, but he was one of my biggest heroes since I was a little kid. He was the only guy on TV I'd ever seen weirder than me. So he was right up there anyway. But then after I started working with him, then that led into us working on a book together.
Huh.
We never got published because his wife got sick and died, but it was called The 12 Husbands of Maudie Fricker. And I still got all the drawings from it. But, it was a really insane schedule, and I came close to having a nervous breakdown. But at the same time, the thing that led to Camp Candy was because I turned things around. Martin Short recommended me to work with John Candy.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming John was more hands-on than Marty was?
No, because he was making movies too. He was making Uncle Buck, I think, during the early part of our show. And then he made, I know he definitely made he was very Crumb during the production.
Okay.
But John was, he didn't have as big a cast of people. The main person that he liked having working with him was Valerie Bromfield, who was only kind of even a walk-on occasionally on SCTV. She was somebody that went way back with him. She was the one that she created that show Head of the Class with Howard Hessman.
Okay,
I remember that. Yeah.
You recognize her. She's a face you would know, but not her name. She was the main person. But the problem with John's show was we wanted it to be one way, and the network wanted it to be another way. We were hoping it would be more Johnny LaRue running a summer camp with kids.
That would have been great.
And instead it became, No Lovable John playing John Candy. And so it all had to be very serious and, tell little stories and little, fables and lessons.
Because that's one thing I always wondered with Camp Candy. I mean, and again, I know Hanna-Barbera did Ed Grimley and Deke was Camp Candy, but like you said, Johnny LaRue, that would have been cool if they lived in that same universe, Camp Candy and Ed Grimley.
Well, the problem was they didn't own a lot of their own characters. I guess Martin did, but John didn't quite yet. I don't believe. But John was very easy to work with, but he was so fed up with Deke at a certain point. He said, "I'm going to do the show, but we're changing the name to Camp Pine Nut because my name is not going to be on this show." That was the day he came in for a meeting, and we were over in North Hollywood and parked underneath the building, and they had one of those Checkpoint Charlie things where the thing comes down. It karate chopped the hood of his car.
Oh boy!
He wasn't good in the mood anyway, and then he came in and started getting to run around from Andy Hayward and his vassals, and it was not a pretty sight.
Wow!
The story editor quit pretty soon after that, and we started over with Jack Mendelson, who story edited Turtles. But he was one of the guys that wrote one of the early episodes of Yellow Submarine that wasn't. Okay. But anyway, John was really. I got to tell you, and I'm not the kind of guy that says, "Oh, celebrity." I can't. I've worked with plenty of solo celebrities. Work with people to do it. But John Candy was probably, without a doubt, the nicest celebrity, one of the nicest people. I mean, the appeal he had on screen was a small percentage of the genuineness.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Stuff in that line. The last time I saw him, we had a nighttime meeting with Chris Columbus. We were planning out. I would be producing and directing cartoon shorts of John Candy's characters that we would have before each one of his Chris Columbus.
Oh wow!
And John got involved with that Argonauts, and went down to Mexico to make that Western, and hated riding horses. Remember, he made that show where he was the soap opera writer.
Yes.
I can't remember the title of it, but it was a pretty good movie, but nobody ever saw it.
I remember.
He has a scene where a horse kind of rears up and he's kind of acting heroic, like the romantic hero. And he said, I hated that scene. I thought I was going to kill myself. So for him to be making a whole movie away from his family, he was the smoke like crazy. The altitude. So, you know, it's sad, but you know what? His whole family had a history of dying young.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was one reason he figured I might as well live it up. I'm going to die anyway. You know. One day he came back from. He came in. I was over at his office. He had a company called Frostbacks, like wetbacks, except for frostbacks were coming down from Canada across the border, and that's where he recorded his radio show, Radio Candy.
Mm-hmm.
He also recorded the episodes of Camp Candy there.
Okay.
He came in. He was always very well dressed. He had really good tailors. He always looked good for a big man. And by the way, I found out years later that was one of the reasons, besides Martin Short's approval, because I weighed over 400 pounds at the time. They felt that John would be more comfortable with me, and indeed that was the case. I had a $10,000 budget to get the character designed of John. So I went to 20 of my cartoonist friends that each had a very different style, and I said, for $500, give me a half day's worth of work just doing sketches of John Candy. Okay. I thought, I'm going to find one, or I'm going to eliminate everything. He hated all of them. He hated every one of them. I blew my entire budget, and he hated them all. And everybody drew him kind of looking like a human landslide, and I could see why. But I thought, well, I think, well, I like this style. Because he'd been a comic fan. He was a comic collector.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he got it. But so I go home, and I'm just like, what am I going to do? And my wife says, well, you know, you should just draw him the way you draw yourself on your business card. You make yourself look cute. You kind of look like Fred Flintstone. It's obvious you're not skinny, but you don't look like a mess either. You know, just concentrate on making it look like his face.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I did it. I sent it over to him. The next thing he goes, "That's it." I thought, shit, I could have made $10,000. But I'm really glad that he dug it, and you know what? I'm not offended. You know, when you're a fat guy, people act like you're from another planet sometimes. So it's like, you know, I understood that he didn't want jokes about him being overweight and that sort of thing, and we never went that direction.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, but he was a good guy. He was a real good guy. Every time you ever see any of his movies, just remind yourself, he's even nicer than the guy I'm looking at. The movie I suggest that's the most like his off-camera persona was the guy he played in Cool Runnings.
Okay.
Where he kind of acted. He wasn't always a happy guy. He wasn't on all the time like most funny people. He was very sensitive. You know, so that's cool. Anyway, on to others.
Next question.
Yes, we got a question here from Pat, and I actually loaded it up on screen, so I'm going to share. How did Oddball Comics come to be? And I went on your website to your Oddball Comics page. So I think we lost Mike for a second. Hopefully he'll come right back.
The negative zone. Okay, there's one right there. Yeah,
yes.
That's essentially that's what Galactus looks like when he's not wearing his helmet. It's actually Jughead under it. Yeah, you know, I started doing Oddball Comics years ago, back in the 70s, as a slideshow at Comic-Con. And I've done it for magazines, and I put it online, and now I'm working on a book for tomorrow. It's a big 200-page book. But it got postponed due to a number of things, including the plague outside. So I'm still just making it more nutritious and delicious. But essentially, growing up, I realized that I collected an awful lot of the weird comics. I like comics starring dinosaurs like Gorgo or gorillas like Conga. I like Land That Time Forgot in what are they called? The War That Time Forgot in Star Spangled War Stories. I remember I have never liked the Legion of Superheroes because they replaced Tales of the Bizarro World and Adventure Comics. The Bizarros were my favorites ever. Ever read Herbie the Fat Fury?
Yes, I've actually done some. I did a drawing of him. I don't know how many years ago for a fanzine.
Well,
Somebody asked me.
I'm a big Herbie fan. I wrote the introduction of the first collection of the Herbies.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
But I like comics that you look at and you go, how the hell did this get published? Wasn't the editor looking, or what was the point of this thing? I mean, this is from the era where Archie was actually pretty creative and trying some fun stuff. But let me hold up a few oddball comics.
Yeah. I'm going to give you the screen then. There you go.
I recently went to a shop. Well, not that recently, but about 22 months ago, I got a whole warm box full of comics. But here's a good one. Here, this issue of Superboy. Let me hold this up. Now, I got a whole bunch of Superboys, so these are crap. But I mean, what the hell is even going on here? You know, there's no action. He's just causing dinosaur skeletons to jump out of the ground. Yeah, it's supposed to be threatening, and it's just goofy. And even the bad guy's costume is not very well designed. But these kind of comics I grew up on, where it's just like, wow, what the hell is this all about? Yeah. Here's a really good one here. This is a good example of the kind of stuff that DC did back in the 50s. Let's mess with Superboy and make him think that he's not the first super guy that was adopted by his parents. I mean, it's like all these stories prey upon kids' insecurities, and what if I was adopted? Or here's a great one with a cover by my friend Neil Adams with Super Baby creating a volcanic eruption by blowing into a volcano. Yeah, that's cute. And this is in the 70s. I mean, this isn't 50s stuff, and they were still doing it. And then I also have stuff like, here's a Josie and the Pussycats. I love stuff from Archie that essentially is the history of what teenagers wear. And here we have a guy entirely dressed in buckskin with fringe on it. Coincidence.
I like that one that you posted today with Superman and Star Sapphire.
Oh, that was an old one, but yeah, that one where Superman essentially is into BDSM. That's interesting. Where Tarzan's the biggest thing on the cover, but it's like a little tiny dinosaur. It's like that's not very threatening. Here's an adventure comic that I got from that last batch too. This is great with the Legion of Super Pets. It wasn't goofy enough. Here they're beating the crap out of the Legion. No reason for me to hate the Legion. You know, even I like too that Streaky's down there. He's waiting to jump onto who is that? What's that guy?
Is that Cosmic Boy?
Cosmic Boy. Yeah, he's about to go pinky on Cosmic Boy's groin.
Yeah, as Crypto's like tearing a hole in his backside.
Oh God. I want to just shout out on Facebook. We got Mark, Robert, Tambini, Anthony Just. They are all loving this. They're saying the cover's awesome. These things are ridiculous.
Well, you're going to see a whole book of this stuff from every comic cover out there.
Wow.
That's great. I've got a ridiculous number of comics that I've collected over the years. As I said, I worked at a comic shop. I got used to kind of looking for just the greatest weird stuff. I've got comics about venereal disease. One's called Sidewalk Romance. Sidewalk Romance, like that's how I caught it, honey. I caught it off the sidewalk. I've got the Bob's Big Boy #1, drawn by Bill Everett, the creator of Submariner. But have you ever seen the East Coast version where he's wearing stripes and has polka dots on his face? Probably not. You guys grew up there. I'm holding you responsible. So this is the sort of stuff. You want to see some more oddball comics?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think people are definitely digging these oddball comics.
Yes.
All right, well, let's see. I only pulled a few out of their bags. Let me see what else I have here to show you.
Mark says some of these things. I guess that last Superboy he said reminds me of the ambiguously gay duo cartoons.
Well, yeah, I guess this one is odd too. They seem to have a thing with effeminate dummies.
Hi, Eddie. Eddie says hi as well. So hi, Eddie.
Well, here we have Clark Kent's lost his mind, and he's using kryptonite on a dummy that looks like it has some excessive makeup on his face. Superman dummy in an issue of Lois Lane where she's whipping it with a cat of nine tails while Superman's tied up with kryptonite bonds. So there was some odd stuff going on at DC. Those editors had some sexual hang-ups, I think. It's too bad this isn't an issue of Action Comics, because in this period, Action Comics had absolutely no action going on the cover either. But here's Superboy. The biggest thing he's doing is he's operating a Superman robot from behind a little screen there so he can mess with his parents. And meanwhile, then his parents are feeling bad here because he's going to be adopted by somebody else.
Oh no!
If that ain't super, I don't know what is. I mean, the other thing I love about these covers is it's like the opposite of what we think of as superheroine.
Yeah.
Even when they're flying, they look more like they're a pinata, like being suspended by some invisible wire, than flying around. And of course, too, finding out that your father wants to kill you is always that was another theme that they turned up all the time. Either Clark Kent's dad or Perry White was trying to kill someone.
We got a question here, and again, it's Zen. Is it Zenjan, the monkey? What's the most oddball of all your oddball comics?
It's really hard to say. I'm fond of just about everything that I haven't seen yet. I mean that's the big key. I've been looking through this stuff forever. When I see a comic I've never seen before, that alone gets me excited.
Yeah.
Because, in some of these Superboys, I was surprised how many of them I didn't remember. Because usually I ignored them, but I paid attention to them and then ignored them.
Yeah.
At a certain point in time in the mid-'60s, just didn't get that Marvel was kicking their butt in terms of just excitement. And even the good stuff at I think the stuff that Julie Schwartz directed was much more adult and sophisticated in a certain way than the Superman stuff that Weisinger's doing. But still, they have this arrogance about war number one, and not realizing that having Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko made them number two, at least to us.
Well, I mean, certainly at that time period too. I mean, like, I guess comics, for lack of a better term, were not taking themselves seriously like they are now. Like, everything has to be this dramatic approach. Like, it was just like, let's have some fun with this. It's comics.
I like that, actually. I mean, right now I find comics, everything is into the world, or I'm not actually a sadist, or somebody's, getting very inappropriate with the Adam's ex-wife or whatever that was. One of those comics, I don't even think about it. But anyway, my point is silliness is okay. And in those days, comics were disposable. I never did, but most kids stuck with a comic they read in their back pocket. They folded it in half and stuck it back there and then traded it for one they had never read before.
Yeah.
I was a comic collector when old comics were a nickel a piece, 3 for a dime, or 6 for a quarter.
Wow. I mean, I'm a very firm believer, and we're talking about, like you said, a lot of the comics say is like all this end of the world kind of stuff. I really, really believe, and the same goes for comic books, and it goes for all the entertainment that we have. I mean, we're living through like what some people might say is this like end of this world situation right now. I really believe that the market for silly books and cartoon movies and Muppets and things like that, after we get out of this period that we're in, because people aren't going to want to look at that end of the world apocalyptic thing for quite some time. People are going to want to look at something that's going to make them happy and just so they laugh a little bit.
I would hope so, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still silly. Nothing's going to make me stop.
No, of course.
Yeah. I got a couple of things that I want to talk to you about, but first we have a question from Corey again, and he says, "Hi Scott, could you please talk about Harvey and Jerry Eisenberg?"
Next, I'll talk about the history of animation. I never met Harvey Eisenberg. Harvey Eisenberg died in 1955, but I'm good friends with his son Jerry, who's now in probably early 80s. And Jerry was certainly one of the best cartoonists I've ever worked with. We worked together a lot on Muppet Baby. and on a Scooby Doo show years after that. But the Muppet Baby really was the show that I think of Jerry as being kind of my partner on that show, because even though we both were storyboard guys, I also was the head of the character design stuff. But we would get assigned these 1 minute long song sequence. And the producer would just give us a scratch track of the song with, maybe the composer singing. And it would be timed out about the right time. And we'd have to come up with the visuals for it. And sometimes he'd have a suggestion, and sometimes he wouldn't. So I'd listen to the song 800 times in a row and write down ideas and things that came to mind and that. And then Jerry and I'd go into his office and come into mine, we'd play with each other. And then we just started talking, and we get way off subject. And one of them would mention the word, okay, wait, that word, you could do this back in there, and you're, oh yeah. And then we talked about some other, and it was like, we had 3 weeks to do a minute song, which is about, I don't know, 35 pages storyboard. But it was essentially, we were writing it as well as drawing. And it was like being on Termite Terrace or something back in the 40s. You don't have that experience with that anymore. It's get it done tomorrow, get it done. You don't have all the information for you. The script isn't finished. You don't have the character designs. Get this done. We had a script. I think Rob Rich was right for us to get as much time, do a good job. And on top of that, kind of trusted us to come up with the ideas. It wasn't a control freak. He told me that he said, good idea is a good idea, no matter who it comes from. That's what we get it from you. Yeah. So Jerry and I had a tremendous amount of fun there. Jerry was one of the guys that we brought into Hanna-Barbera from Warner Brothers back in the early 60s. He was involved in designing a lot of those cartoon characters. But his dad had started working in comics back in the 30s, I believe. He definitely did a lot of stuff for Marvel's Funny Animal Comics in the 40s. And then he wound up working, I think he was probably working with one of the Jerry Tunes. I'm not sure who worked in the studio he worked for, but he came out here and wound up working on Tom and Jerry's for MGM, and then wound up realizing he liked working from home instead of working in the studio, so he was doing comic book stuff left and right for Western Publishing, first Dell, and then it all became the brand name. But he would work on tissue, like Gene Hazleton. And he was the artist that the editors at Gold Key and Dell felt was the best guy to draw the Hanna-Barbera stuff, because he worked on all the MGM stuff, which had similar designs. And he would be the first guy that they get to draw the first 3 or 4 issues, to be the model for the next guys that came along, usually Pete Alvarado or Kay Wright, someone kind of what would be the second tier artist. So he would set the bar high, and they moved him all through. But I've got his original art for the very first Flintstones comic in '61 was a thing called Bedrock Bedlam. And he did an adaptation of the Smurfs. So I've got the actual drawings for his version of the very first episode of the Flintstones ever made. It wasn't the one that was shown. I think it's number 4 in the series. It was the first one that they made with the pilot footage, just altered a little bit. But that one's my favorite episode. But he died in '65, and he was still drawing Flintstone stuff. I've got also the original cover from the last comic. So, yeah, he and Gene Hazleton are my 2 favorite print cartoonists, both huge influences. Of course, the guy that did the actual Flintstone models, Ed Benedict, is also a big fan.
Yeah, I'm a big Ed Benedict fan myself.
Now, let me just ask, the Gene Hazleton strips, I mean, certainly the Flintstone ones, but even the Yogi ones, who owns those now? Warner's owns them, or the syndicate that
Warner's owns them, and in fact, Harvey Eisenberg did the final art on a lot of those after Gene had worked out the gag and kind of roughed the whole thing out, because after a while he needed other artists to help him out. So did Al Weisman, who used to work on all those really good Dennis the Menace.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis goes to Hawaii, Dennis goes to Washington, those big ones. Really good drastic dudes.
Yeah, because it would be great, like if they would put like a collection of those. I mean,
I proposed that when I worked at Hanna-Barbera back in the 90s. Everybody acted like I was out of my mind.
really.
I would have bought. I love reading, all the old strips and things like that. That's
Well, I also tried to get him into a series of home videos that would be like episodes of Quick Draw McGraw and Huckleberry Hound. They thought it was a good idea to do a video with 10 Huckleberry Hound cartoons. Like, no, these get old by the third one. You need to do it the way they were created. And I said, maybe put some of the commercials back in too. Maybe Kellogg's will throw you a few bucks or something to amortize the cost. They acted like our like who would like these cartoons that much? Yeah. And then of course it went to Warner Brothers, and I was on those video, the DVD box sets. I reviewed on those, and they wouldn't even let us mention the date of the cartoon because they figured then people would know they're old, so they won't buy them.
Oh my God!
I mean, people working in home video are they're 15 years old or Alzheimer's. I don't know what the problem is. They just don't do it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the home video, that's cool. Is I have this. I used to be able to get these home video catalogs, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday. This was during
has a piece that I drew for another publication that they just kind of used because they figured we own the Flintstones, so screw them.
Yeah. So like that, you on the bottom here. There's.
Yeah, that's
the timeline. Yeah.
Yeah, those are taken out of an article that just was reprinted for Retro Fan Magazine.
I'll just go to this one too because I know you mentioned the Jetsons and the Flintstones earlier, but there you go. There's.
Yeah, well, those are all my drawings. Yeah, in fact.
So those were done for a different magazine that Hanna-Barbera just like, oh, we're going to put them in here?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, when you own them, try to sue us, I was pleased they did it, but I don't know. I think they credited it.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I think there was something in look, and I'll just read this what it said here. It says, the Flintstone milestones in this catalog are taken from your Scott Shaw's retrospective album, The Bedrock Chronicles, The History of Hanna-Barbera's The Flintstones, to be published in 1991 by Contemporary Books.
Yeah, Hanna-Barbera screwed that up completely.
And let me tell you, I was looking for that book. I promise you, I would have bought that.
I'll tell you what happened. Let me finish. Let me tell you the real story then, because it's more interesting than what they wrote, I'm sure.
Well, let me just tell you what they said. You, Scott Shaw, are you America's foremost authority on the Flintstones? Not only amassed an extensive collection of bedrocking information and memorabilia, but written and drawn America's first family for films, television shows, and commercials. As a child, it was the Flintstones, and the first episode that inspired you to be a cartoonist.
Well, they can kiss my ass because that was a guy working for no money that was obviously a fan of mine. But I'll tell you what happened. They came to me. They wanted me to take over. They wanted actually me to do the Flintstones comic strip as a relaunch.
Okay.
They wanted me to write and draw the Flintstones daily and Sunday comic strip. And then when we actually had a meeting at a very fancy hotel in Beverly Hills. And I remember I was driving a dumpy old car. They were embarrassed that it even parked. I'm here for a meeting. So they tell me that, first of all, I don't get to keep the originals. And I will get a whopping pay of $700 a week to write and draw, letter, ink, everything.
Wow. And
I knew that Gene Hazleton was never happy with the deal that he got to get the he work. So I said, I am doing the work on the Flintstones book, and they said, well, here's the thing. And they actually just told me this like it was dealing with the mom. They said, if you don't...
Was this Joe Barbera who was saying this?
No, this were people from Taft or it wasn't Warner Brothers yet. I think it was Taft, but they were people, living in the infrastructure of a big company and bullying people, essentially. They said, we are going to charge you $500 for every drawing when book. I said, what if I did the drawings myself? We would still charge you $500 for each of those unless you consent to doing the comics. And I said, well, you know, I love the Flintstones. They were the reason I wanted, really the finalizing reason I became a cartoonist. But I said, if I do this, I will hate myself and I will hate the Flintstones for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And about that time, the fire alarm went off in this place. And I mean, it was a fancy place.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh, that must be the bullshit detector. I'll see you gentlemen later. And I got up and left the table.
Oh.
And never heard another thing about it. And called Jim. They said they want to approve the book. And they wound up getting somebody to do the book. And it was terrible. It was remaindered almost immediately.
That's the one with the big B, the big B on it.
No, the big F. Because it gets.
Oh, yeah, big F. I'm sorry.
Yes. Because
I have that too, yeah.
Because they effed it up. They even, I mean, the main thing about that book, not only is the book full of inaccuracy, but it bounds so bad now, every copy is self-destructive.
My copy is still good.
Yeah, it's falling out of the binding because they used glue that wouldn't work.
Really?
So, I mean, but that's kind of the way Hollywood works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the sad thing is if you really care about something, you think you're nuts. And if you want to do a really good job, they say, you know, maybe we should pull this away from you because you might do it. So there you go.
Wow. All right. I did have another question.
Right out of history.
Let's cheer up everybody out in the book.
That was a page right out of history.
Yes. So my other question for you is, we haven't really talked about it. Tell us about Captain Carrot.
Yes.
How'd that come to be? How was it working with Roy on it?
Oh, I've been missing the cover for that one, but that was one I got as a kid.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, people get very emotional.
Captain Carrot.
I actually had a friend text me when he saw this one up. He can't come on today live because he's a little busy with his family, but he was like, I love the Zoo Crew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let me just give a shout out. His name's Delphin Barrel. Del, thank you for texting me about
Oh,
that.
yeah, no, I know.
You know Del?
Well, through Facebook, yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yes. Captain Carrot came about. As I said, I met Roy at some of the early Comic Cons, but I really got to know him when he started coming into the comic store that I worked for in Studio City. And he was editing What If. And
Okay.
I always liked the, you know, what you call the imaginary stories. I always liked it when they said, you know, we wrote ourselves into a corner. Let's just do something. So I pitched him an idea. I said, what if we reverse Spider-Man's origin and a radioactive human to a spider? That way it could be a funny animal comic.
Yeah.
Sure. So I pitched it to him, and he said, well, just do it 8 pages. And I started working on it. And I wound up, a lot of people don't know it, but the credits, Dave Stevens was my neighbor, and I worked with Dave when he was a kid. Did some comics together for some funny animal stuff together. Dave's not known for his funny animals, but we did stuff. And anyway, he did the Peter Parkers strip, and he made some of the inking on the spider, man spider character. But it was an 8-page story, and it was kind of done in one. But Marvel keeps reprinting it. I still haven't gotten paid for the latest print, but they claimed I would, but of course I haven't. But you know, it keeps coming back. But they've never asked me to work on Spider-Ham, and I've seen the latest version of Spider-Ham. It's way too real. It doesn't even look like it. So I probably. But that led to doing Captain Carrot with Roy. That was when they were starting to offer ownership of characters. You don't hear about that anymore. But Roy did Arak, another character you never see again. And he did that, I think, with Ernie Colon. And we did Captain Carrot together. but it originally was going to be Super Squirrel and Just a Lot of Animals.
Okay.
And I actually did a couple of pages of samples. Had like a big carrot, Galactus-looking character in it. And they said they decided they didn't want to. This was originally something they were approving, and then they said, we can't make this a separate brand because it's all based on existing characters, existing property. So create them into new characters. And I didn't know this at the time, but Roy had worked with Sam Granger, a guy that wound up as a painter at Marvel. He did a really cool series called The Sentinels, like Charlton, that I liked. Gone very cartoony.
Okay.
But he wound up doing the first version, and it never went anywhere. And apparently Roy and Jerry Conway talked about something sometime. That's why he's a co-owner of it. But ultimately, Roy and I created. There were a few characters that never made it into the comic. Little Cheese started out as Big Cheese, and we also had a character called it was a hummingbird character, and we also had. But anyway, then I designed them all, and then I got these drawings from Joe Orlando saying, we want them to look more like real superheroes. Not seeming to get the fact that, no, I'm a cartoon. So I had to kind of teach myself anatomy so I could make them look more like the Joe Orlando version. But quite honestly, Joe was a good cartoonist, but he did not capture the look or the vibe that I wanted. So I took everything back to the way I wanted to do it. But I had a lot of trouble keeping up with deadlines. I was very intimidated by the fact that I'd worked for Marvel on other people's characters, but never on my own character. It was the company I read when I was really young.
Yeah.
Reading all those Superboy comics. And I just kept watching the deadlines over and over, so they finally brought in other people to do it. But I'd write them, or I'd ink them, or I'd do something. But by the time in the end, they had a friend of mine drawing him, who was a guy that drew superheroes, and he just looked like superheroes with animal heads, and it wasn't funny, and it wasn't cartoon, and it wasn't anything that I would have read if I was, But I do. I'm very happy about one thing. Issues that I did, I get a lot of response now. People saying, because I did underground comics before all this, and kids say it was like reading an underground comic for kids. There wasn't anything dirty in it. There wasn't any kind of subversive stuff in it, but it didn't have that corporate comic flavor.
Absolutely,
yeah. Lots of extra goodies just for the sake of making it, which is always my.
Yeah.
Anthony Just, our friend from Alterniverse, he wanted to ask, what was your opinion on the Grant Morrison version of the Captain Carrot characters?
Well, Grant botched it. I mean, he didn't even have the right characters turned into the right animals. They dictated us that some of the animals would be turned into real animals, not turned back until they decided it happened. And Bill Morrison and I pitched a bunch of things to put alive between then and whenever they did, and they said, "Oh no, no." I had an 80-page giant that would have reprints of stories that never published before, including like a World War II terrific Watson story, something like that. They didn't want that. I had a thing about the new animal characters formed when Earth was mostly underwater after and this was in the miniseries in 2007. And they didn't want that. And then, but they put it off so long. By the time Grant Morrison got around to it, he got it all wrong anyway. So even the fans were mad. But they don't. I think there's a real thing at DC. First of all, not just about doing funny stuff, because they did a Captain Carrot story like last year, I think, for a summer special. And it was pretty well drawn, but the characters all looked like maniacs. It wasn't fun. They looked like they wanted to kill each other.
Yeah.
I don't like that sort of stuff. I like it to be fun. But I think their biggest issue is the fact that Roy and I own a percentage of the property. I own 10% outright. And I own 10% of anything that isn't in a comic book. But they did that thing that was on Adult Swim. Remember they did a superhero special,
Okay.
and through
Robot.
yeah, and they had the death of Captain Carrot that was essentially a rip-off of Chuckles the Clown from Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Mhm.
They had all the characters in there, and I went to them and I said, "Well, do I get any money?" They said, "Well, no money exchanged hands during the making of that." And I said, "Come on, I saw it in Best Buy. Money's exchanging hands. What do you owe?" "Well, it wouldn't be much." I said, "I know it wouldn't be much. It was 5 minutes out of a TV show. Give me money to take my family out for dinner. I don't care." They just won't even return my calls. The answer is, we're Warner Brothers. You're one guy, so go screw yourself.
Mhm.
And that's how my feeling about Warner Brothers. I mean, I don't expect to make money. That wasn't the biggest thing I ever did in my life. But they kind of act like, no, you don't exist. And I'm not putting up with that. I'll exist fine without that.
Yeah. Now, in regards to Captain Carrot too, let me just ask, because again, as a kid reading this, was there ever talk when it was brand new and out there of doing animation with Captain Carrot?
Absolutely, yeah. Ruby Spears was involved, and neither Roy nor I had any involvement at all. They didn't want to use us, but they did pitches 2 years in a row. I think I got $2,500 one year and $2,000 the next. That was the kind of option money they were paying. He wanted to do it. The weirdest part was the second year. It wasn't just the Zoo Crew. They wanted to have the Zoo Crew, and as the Zoo Crew's sidekick, they wanted to have Wonder Woman.
Really?
Yeah. And of course, that wouldn't have worked. But I mean, it was probably DC getting desperate more than ABC or Ruby Spears. But whatever had happened, nothing ever happened. But I at least made more money on that than I ever made off the reprints of the comic. Yeah, I got so far that
the showcase.
That showcase. I've received $100 total.
Really?
$100.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they lost my number. I mean, I'm not expecting a landslide, but I know that they're as the guy that drew the majority and wrote the majority of those stories, that I should be getting more than $100.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how you get treated by Warner Brothers.
And certainly they should be sending you copies of it, for you to do your appearances too. Here's a stack of them. Yeah.
Actually, I had to buy them in a way that it cost the shipping cost more than the comics and the books themselves.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm not going to bother to keep those in my stuff.
Yeah.
These they're probably in a landfill somewhere. I mean, I don't see any of those books being sold now.
Wow.
Well, I'm a showcase collector, so I have my copy.
Well, I buy every showcase I get if it's got issues that I don't remember reading before.
Yeah, I got like I don't know, something like 20 on my back shelf there.
I have 3 showcase books. I have 3 showcase books. I got Shazam, Super Friends, Captain Carrot. All lighthearted stuff.
Yeah.
Super Friends, those were all inked by Vinnie Coletta. I'm sorry.
They're not the best story. I'm like I said, Hanna-Barbera fan.
Well, I'm a Ramona Fradon fan. It always broke my heart to see her stuff being inked by Vinnie Coletta. I one year at Comic-Con, she showed up. This was when Ramona was drawing the what was the Dale Messick strip? Brenda Starr. She was drawing Brenda Starr.
Okay.
And 2 weeks worth of Brenda Starrs got lost in the mail. So she showed up at Comic-Con and got a call from the syndicate saying, "We need those now." And she's like, "I'm at a comic convention." They said, "Well, that's not our problem." So she repenciled them at night and brought them down, and a bunch of us just inked them we were like a bunch of Tasmanian devils on a big lamb shank or something. We're just and we got the whole thing done in about 3 hours. It was great. It was like golden age artists. We're passing them back and forth, working upside down. One guy's working on one side, we're working on the other. But it was the most easy stuff to ink I've ever had. And you're thinking, Vinny just completely botched it. You didn't need a lot of extra lines on this stuff. Her work is beautiful in its simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, talking about just I mean, and I don't know what the process is for these showcase books, but I kind of dig like the black and white versions.
Well, I think what it is they've just got old plates, of the black and white line work. So that's what they're using, and that was not exactly probably very accurate. I imagine that stuff has deteriorated a bit over the years, but I mean, if somebody really cares about that stuff, they're going to go pay the money for the original comic.
Yeah.
We got another question from Corey. And Corey says, let me just get over. I'm actually on it. It says, Scott, what are your favorite art instruction books?
Well, I sent you a copy of one of them. I don't know if you want to put it up on the screen. It's Woody Woodpecker's Guide to How to Draw.
Is it? I don't remember which one it's in.
Last one I sent you in the batch that I sent you a little while ago.
Okay, hold on. I will look.
It's
so that was the weed transfer.
To answer Corey's question, I really don't look at instructional books anymore. Fortunately, I still want to get better, but that's not how I'm going to learn. It's by looking at Sergio's stuff. This was the book that my first How to Draw book. And this is the book I learned the most from back in 1959, I think is when this came out. Woody Woodpecker cartoons were finally released to TV. Most of them were not that great, but I liked the good ones. But this book was done by the guy that also did a lot of Flintstone art later, a guy named Frank McSavage. And taught how to draw funny animals. And I look at this book, I've still got a few copies of it. It was essentially, this version is a hardback, but it was also published in the same format as a coloring book, so it was very inexpensive. So almost every cartoonist my age had a copy of it. Yeah. And I look at my cartooning now and still see traces of stuff I learned back when I had this book. So, I'm sure there's some good how to draw books out there, but I was actually approached to do a redo of that one that Preston Blair did for
you mean this book here, the cartoon animation?
Yeah, the ones that the original version that's composed of.
Because he was actually using like Tom and Jerry, the actual Tom and Jerry in there, and actual
that copy. I know the original, which is kind of hard to find now.
A friend of ours has a copy of it. I just haven't been able to pick it up. I want to pick it up one day.
It came to me years ago and wanted me to do a new version, and I don't know why. Maybe my bid was too high, but they wound up getting the designer for SpongeBob to do the version.
Oh wow!
Okay.
There's a new version by this. I can't think of his name, but he's a very good cartoonist. So.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just more contemporary. It doesn't have that 1940s.
Is that the not the one who created it? He's like worked on the comic, the storyboards. Was it Sherm Cohen? Is that who it is?
That's who it is. Yes.
Yeah. His stuff is great. I'm actually teaching myself some new software right now, and he's got some YouTube videos on one of the softwares that I'm learning, and he's got great, easy to follow instructions. I love his work. But yeah, he did the first few SpongeBob comics, I believe.
Yeah, I did a little work on them, but not much. I was mainly working on the Simpsons comic.
Yeah, you did a lot of. How much you did a lot of Simpsons work, or?
I probably wrote and drew maybe 30, 40 stories.
Okay. Yeah, I got to go through mine, see if I have any of yours. I collected Simpsons for like 3-4 years.
A lot of the ones where they had a back cover that was a different comic, and then they'd have a 4-page thing.
I remember like the older ones, like when they
I did Lard Lad. I did a lot of different secondary characters. I did one that was a catalog of stuff from the John Waters characters collectible store.
Yeah,
I had fun doing it. And then the new editor told me, he said, "I don't like your work. It's all nostalgic." I said, "No, it's all nostalgic because the previous editor, Bill Morrison, liked my stories that were nostalgic." And I never got another assignment from the new editor.
Wow.
Jeez.
Yeah.
He's also the genius to stop giving Sergio Aragones in.
I'm sorry, could you repeat? I couldn't hear that one.
That editor is also the genius that stopped giving Sergio Aragones work on Simpsons.
Wow. I know I have a few of those. Sergio's.
Because who'd buy a comic because Sergio would draw it?
I'm one of those people. I'm a huge Sergio fan. He's probably my all-time favorite.
No secret why Bongo went under a few years later with that new editor's guidance. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I wrote a few notes. Anybody in the audience there have any more questions for Scott?
I honestly have to say, and I know we've been going for a while here, but Scott,
almost 2 hours.
This has probably been one of our best.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah.
This has been one of our best shows, I think, by far.
Oh, that's bad news.
No, I mean, this is great. I mean, people are really digging what we're talking about here. And I mean, certainly we'll probably have to have you come back again too, because I mean, you have been involved in so many things,
yes.
And we can.
Well, I mean, we can pinch it off now if you want.
If you want, I mean,
what are your notes, Grazia?
Well, I had a few things. Like, I know you created Rocky Rhino for Rhino Records. I was wondering if you wanted to talk a little bit about that real quick.
Got a lot of free Todd Rundgren music that way. That was always nice. I like working for Rhino a lot. In fact, I'm still working with one of the art directors there. He's helping being the overall designer of these children's books I've been working on.
Okay.
And let me. You know what? Can I show you some stuff I have been working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give you the screen.
Let me see. I pulled some stuff out that I just thought you guys would find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This, I believe, is poster art from, I believe, the third San Diego Comic Con. No, it's
wow, that's nice.
It's going to be later than that, 72 maybe. But that's one that, I was trying to use stuff that was either weird or very recognizable. So this is a weird drawing, the way Buck Rogers was actually drawn back in the old days.
Yeah, I was going to say that's. Is that your art or?
I drew it. John Pound inked it, and our friend Roger Friedman worked on some of the lettering.
Okay.
That was probably 73. This one is definitely 75, but I did the very first one too. I just don't have a print out of that. But this is one I did for the 75 one, and you can see I was using other people's art in that middle panel, but it's starting to look like my stuff a little.
Yeah.
The style's kind of starting to come together.
I like that.
And from that point on, let's see what I got here. Mostly just some recent stuff. You probably saw that new Monkeys book that I did the art for. I worked on some Monkeys albums for Rhino, so I've got a kind of reputation. So I've done a couple of Monkeys book covers. This is the latest one. Oh, wait here.
Yeah.
You can see it's about their careers after being the Monkeys.
Okay.
There's Mike doing his country western stuff and all Mickey's projects, and Davies, and of course, the biggest thing that Peter did was get arrested for pot, so we just have him in jail. The back cover, I've got Mr. Schneider, the dummy. He's got his own box tickets. What the hell do you expect? I'm a dummy. I've been working with a fellow named Mort Todd that kind of is the guy that keeps Charlton Comics alive.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be doing a comic that is an all-new Gorgo comic. They published a comic based on the Gorgo monster movie. Well, I found a European comic that's all fumetti, the whole story in photos taken from the film. So I did a couple. We're also going to have cartoons in the back by different cartoonists about Gorgo, because we all love it, because the dinosaurs live at the end. No monster gets killed at any time. Yeah. So here's one of my Gorgo cartoons.
Wow. Very nice. I like that a lot.
Yeah, well, there's a scene in there where a guy is walking with a sign that says the end is near as everything's collapsing and a crowd stampedes over him and kills him. Even as a boy, I thought that was pretty funny English humor. And then another one is, Gorgo has those little ears. So I figured I'd do a gag where the Air Force is after him because they've just realized that he can fly. Those little ears are going like crazy. So those are going to be colored up for the book. I'm wearing this shirt. This was done for the San Diego Comic Fest a few weeks ago, and this was my original art for that.
Oh, very nice.
Cool.
The Rhedosaurus from Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, and then those little superhero characters are ones I created. They're like kind of the spokesman for the San Diego Comic Fest.
Nice.
They put them on all their merchandise. I was talking about working on a children's book. Let me show you some stuff from that. I've done one, and this is the sequel. The original is called Maroon Lagoon, and I'm not writing them, I'm just drawing them. But this is a double-page spread.
Wow. I love that.
Is this blurring out, or should I pull it back?
No, you're good. That's right. I love all the animals in the boat. The raccoon's really nice.
Say that too.
Yeah.
It was not my idea, but the fellow that's writing this was not a Pogo fan, so I tried to go out of my way not to draw this to look like Pogo.
Okay.
Carl Kohler wants to say that he loves Gorgo, and he thinks that's great.
Carl Kohler?
Yes.
How do you spell that?
Karl, Carl, and then Koeller.
Okay, good. I was scared to death. That's also the name of the guy that used to be the original editor on Cartoons magazine, the magazine that had all the jokes about automotives and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
These are what my actual pages look like normally for it. I'm drawing them about this size.
Okay.
And you can see even from you want to do a children's book? Here's a stack of pages for a children's book. Go through them, but this is what they look like before I've inked them. Here's an example of my pencil art on them.
Oh, nice. I mean, it's a little hard to see being blue, but it's
Sure. Well, the whole reason for drawing them blue is that the camera won't pick them up.
No, exactly. Yeah. That's awesome. That is awesome stuff. I love looking at that stuff.
Carl is also a Pogo fan.
Well, I am too. I believe me, I'm not avoiding drawing them because I don't like them. I love them. I just don't want somebody thinking I'm plagiarizing them.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. I have a couple of his collections behind me as well of the Pogo books.
Yeah.
I used to work with the guy that took over the strip when Kelly thought that he was going to be getting better.
Mm-hmm. Whoa, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to give myself the screen. What happened? He just got disconnected. Hopefully he comes back in. I did not touch this.
And I'm not here either. Where am I, Grazia?
Oh, no, that's just because I have the screen set up like that. Here comes Scott. Your guest will need... Oh, no, it says he disconnected. Let me text him real quick if he wants to come back on. Otherwise, we'll close it up.
But no, that's like I said. Honestly, this has been probably one of our best shows. Everybody who's been watching this tonight, I mean, we've been appreciating all your comments, all your likes, and all that stuff. So certainly, I mean, and again, we can always have Scott come back too if all else. So that's not a big problem. But totally appreciate everything that's happening tonight, because this has been truly, I think, one of our best programs that we've done, without a doubt.
I just texted him, but in the meantime, until I hear back or he comes on, let me just share some of the stuff that I was sent.
Why don't you pull up Scott's while we're waiting for him? Because we didn't go to his website. Let's go to his website. Give us a walkthrough of the website.
So this is his website when you come to it.
And what is the website so people know? Can we put that on the bottom of the screen?
I can't right now, but it is Shaw, SHAW hyphen cartoons with an S, CARTOONS.com. So if you want to type that into the I'll type that in into the comments here so you guys can see it. I don't know if I'm going to hear back, but shaw-cartoons.com. Whoops. And now it's going. All right, so that's his website right there. And, you can contact him through here. You can go to his biography. And
give me one. I'm going to see if I can pull him up, too. Give me, you take the helm for a minute, and I'll call you right back. Or here, take the helm.
Yeah, I got it. Don't worry. I'm always watching. I don't know why it looks like everything got selected on my screen here. Give me. Okay. So obviously his bio's here, his resume, things he's worked on, the shop, so you can get prints, comic books, original art, miscellaneous. I was going through this earlier, and it's just a lot of cool stuff. So if you look at comic books, he obviously worked on some of these here. Well, all of these. You can go to his portfolio and see things. So comic art, like he said, he was the original artist on Sonic the Hedgehog for Archie Comics. Here's some Hanna-Barbera. I actually have that book right there, I believe.
Which book is that?
The Yogi Bear one. I think I can go in larger on it. So, okay, he just texted. He's gonna log back on.
Okay, cool. I was just about to call.
All right.
You see which Yogi Bear are you talking about now?
No, hold on. The Yogi Bear comic is this one.
Oh, I have that. Okay, I have that.
It says he got this. So hold on, I'm going to disconnect him. Your guest will need to reconnect. Okay, you need.
Just a quick thing as we're waiting for Scott. Our friend Anthony over at Alternaverse. We're going to be back with. Scott's going to be coming back in a minute, but they want to know, when will Michael Grazia Studios be drawing along again live?
Well, on my YouTube page, Michael Grazia, I draw every Monday and Wednesday at 1, and on our IncrediCom page every Friday at 1.
Gotcha. I guess he said he's coming back in, because I know a couple people are just wondering.
Yeah.
We'll be right back with us if you want to hang out for a few more minutes. And we'll just wrap up with Scott, I think, because we've gone pretty well tonight. But we'll wrap up with a nice formal closing with him. But we got a lot of cool other guests that'll be joining us in the upcoming weeks too. So while we're waiting for Scott, I'll just throw some names out there. We have Dave Alvarez, who did a lot of Looney Tunes comics, and he's just an amazing artist. Check him out.
Okay.
Amazing cartoonist. He's gonna be with us. Dan Parent from Archie Comics, and he's got a Kickstarter out with Fernando Ruiz now of Die Kitty Die. They're going to be with us. Our buddy Marty Grabstein will be back once again. So he's coming up. Samantha Newark, who's going to be one of our guests, she's going to be with us in the next couple of weeks too. And I think, are we going live with Scott? Scott's back.
Scott is back. So, Scott, welcome back. Whoa.
What happened?
I'm getting some major feedback in my ear.
What's going on? Am I creating?
I don't know. Hold on. Hold on. I'm going to unplug my ears.
Red alert.
Okay, it's gone. It's gone. I don't know why that feedback came in. Scott, while you were gone, I was just kind of giving a tour of your website. We were on your portfolio page. Is there anything? No. Oh, wow. Okay, hold on. Headsets are coming off.
I think something's up with Scott's sound, possibly.
All right, I gotta.
I think I saw.
Readjust my mic. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, and now we're sterilized by that sound.
And we lost Grazia. It's you and me now, Scott.
Completely sterilized. We can't have kids anymore.
But yeah, so like Mike Grazia was saying, while you were gone, and I don't know what happened to him. He disappeared now. While you were away, we were just talking. We were showing. He had your website up there, so we were showing people where they can go to find more samples of your artwork, contact you to do commissions, things like that.
Yeah, I'm definitely doing commissions these days. I'm still got plenty of work, but when you're trapped at home this kind of hours, I hate to just goof off. If people want stuff, I just did a really nice commission. There's all the Muppet Babies meeting Sugar and Spike, and even one of the Rugrats for somebody. So.
Oh wow,
that's really nice. You sent me a link to that. It was very
something that I would enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
Fun and kind of more than just here's a drawing of Wilma's head. I can plenty of those at conventions. But if I'm here, I want to do something kind of interesting to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So I missed a little bit. Were you just kind of doing a wrap up, or?
Oh no, I was just letting Scott know that we were on his website, letting people know where they can find him to do commissions and whatnot.
Yeah, I think I was behind all the technical stuff. I'm sorry. I didn't.
No, it's okay. Somehow
I have that touch.
No, it's quite okay. It's just when you have headsets in, everything's really loud. So it was like it sounded like, you know, when you're in a auditorium or something, someone's and that mic just feedback.
Oh yeah.
That was what was just in my ears, really loud twice. So
so I do have a question from Carl Kohler. Scott, how do you keep motivated?
I'm glad. Look, you know, so many people in this business, kind of, you see them for a couple of years, and then you wonder whatever happened to them. You know, it's a very fickle business, and it's a hard business. But I like drawing cartoons. I mean, that's all I ever really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, fortunately, if I can't work on one thing, I find something else to work on. I mean, I do a lot of different things. So, you know, I mean, it's easy for me to keep motivated. If I have time where I'm not trying to let a deadline, it's like, okay, well, I got to come up with my next project anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, those Now It Can Be Told that you saw that Dan Necrosis sent you. That's stuff that I do assignments all the time. I've got plenty of my own stories to tell.
Would you mind if I share some of those?
Please do.
This is beautiful work. I love this stuff. We're going to go straight over here. And so is this it? Make sure I'm on the right. No, that's not the right one. That's the stuff you sent me. So, the one from Dan. Here it is. So this is some stuff you've done. I was the alien Superman.
And these are all this is a comic series I do called Now It Can Be Told. And the reason it's got that dire title is because obviously nobody needs to know any of this stuff. It's just stuff that happened to me. But Danny colored these and did a nice job. The only time these have ever been really printed, I did a small booklet of them that sell at San Diego one year. But now I'm trying to get a deal to get a whole book of them, because these are all based on real stories that have happened to me. For example, this one these are kind of all jumbled up here, but the one on the left there is all about cartoonists that influenced me.
Okay.
For me drawing, I made my own Fred Flintstone suit the first year because they didn't have any Fred Flintstone suits out yet.
Yeah.
It's not me working with Hanna-Barbera and watching Rough and Ready and stuff.
I see the dance with Joseph Barbera.
Joe Barbera, he started getting carried away and did some crazy dance around me. I never did know what it was all about. But this is all about my interactions with sometimes just pets, cats, and other types of celebrities. Sometimes it's how I became so weird, or how I decided to sign my name with an exclamation point, or there's one that's all a whole page about Jack Kirby there. Yeah. These are kind of out of order, but you can kind of see these are just little stories, not about all my wonderful accomplishments, which are very few, but about the fun and the crazy things that have happened. I think people are actually probably more interested in reading funny stories than about somebody's list of and then this year I made this much money.
And just in case people don't know, this is laid out to go to print, so that's why the pages aren't in order. So like this could be page 5 and this could be page 12. They're just not, they're not in order.
But this is me actually, unless I'm like trying to intentionally draw a Jack Kirby hand. This is me drawing more or less in my own style, which I don't do nearly as often until recently. And quite honestly, it's nice not to having anybody to make you look at their model sheet.
Yeah, no, it's really nice. I like you have John Candy up there in that one. I mean, I'm not going to go through all of them. I want to see you re-put this together, and but this is great. I love the work. I love how you draw yourself.
John Candy liked it.
It's beautiful. I mean, I'm going to go back up. I really like. First of all, I love the way you draw, the Hanna-Barbera up there in that corner shot.
I really, I mean, just the stories I've heard, and Grazi and I, we joke about this all the time in our own little partnership. But I think you really capture the essence of Joe Barbera in your artwork.
Wow, Joe was a guy that. The funniest thing to me about Joe Barbera was how much he loved being Italian. He would mention it at any given point. He one time called me into his office and spent about a half hour trying to show me his new copy of the Who's Who of Italian Americans. And I had a deadline. I said, would you just show me your entry? Oh, well, let's see if it's in there. You know, and every time it's called Neapolitan Mouse. Neapolitan Cat, I forget which. But it's one of the last Tom and Jerry's they did. It's from about 56. But it's essentially an animated travelogue of Italy with Tom and Jerry. Okay. And they're chased around by some dogs that obviously wound up as the basis for the goofy guards. Horrible. But I get all teary every time because I think this made Joe so happy. And there's a scene in it where they meet a little Italian mouse. The Italian mouse recognizes Tom and Jerry. Now, this is typical H&B self-promotion, but still it makes me get weepy every time because the mouse goes, Tom, Jerry, and then he last goes, funny cartoon. And he's just delighted. And that's really why we all make this stuff. It's because we just want to make funny cartoons. Yeah. It is. I mean, I'm not trying to be significant here, but that's really the truth. Yeah. It all boils down to that. That's why we do this.
Make people happy.
Yeah. Make us happy. Yeah. You know, that I love that old Gary Larson cartoon where the old guys are on the porch of the old cartoonist's home. And I once drew a guy's nose this big. You know, I mean, that's the way we are. Yeah. Doug Wildey once got real upset with me once. I was wound up working on the Godzilla Power Hour.
Godzuki.
They just hired me to work on the Fred and Barney Show, but they didn't have a script yet. So they said, "Well, here we're going to have you work on. We're going to teach you layouts on Godzilla." And I just don't draw Doug Wildey humans very well, but I had no problem drawing Godzilla monsters. Doug talked like this. He goes, "Yeah, because you know, we're gonna have to give you just special layouts." He goes, "I just want you drawing the monsters." I said, "You do?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You're one of them Bigfoot cartoonists, aren't you?" Bigfoot was actually a monster, but he was referring back in the old days. That's in the New York scene. If you drew superheroes, it was realistic. If you drew funny stuff, it was Bigfoot because the characters all had big noses and big feet. Wow. Gag cartoon. Yeah, you're just a Bigfoot cartoonist. You're not much use to me. Don't worry, Doug. I won't plague you for long. Yeah.
And you mentioned Fred and Barney, and then going back to that time period, I'm like, what the heck was with Fred and Barney Meet the Thing? My God.
What it was neither show was performing that well. I think the Flintstones were doing well. Nobody really, if you were a Marvel fan, you didn't like the Thing because that wasn't the real thing. He was a teenager and he had a stupid ring.
Yeah. The Thing ring, do your thing, or whatever he said. Yeah.
The interesting about the Thing show was it was doing so badly. They got Tex Avery involved to come up with gags for those bikers. Things happened to those bikers.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, and then Tex said, "Screw this! I'm creating my own show." But that's where I worked with Tex Avery a lot. It was at Hanna-Barbera. He was in his last legs, but he was still creating stuff.
Quickie Koala was his last thing, right?
Yeah, I did almost all of the Bungle Brothers.
Oh, I love Quickie. Wow. Too. Another one of those '80s cartoons.
Yeah, I helped develop the one with the dog that lived in the junkyard too.
Dirty Dog and Ratso.
Yeah.
I have that DVD too from the archive.
I don't have any of them.
Yeah.
I don't even have the Ed Grimley one.
Oh.
Really? If I watch those, I'd just go, "Oh man, there's where we didn't get the retake in time." In fact, Martin Short complained about so much stuff on those. I had retakes done that they sent us. I hoped to cut them in on the second airing.
Mm-hmm.
They came in. Bill Hanna had them thrown in the trash. He goes, "We're not spending any more money editing these things.
Yeah.
We already spent the money fixing them," and then he threw away the fix them.
But now, going back to Ed Grimley, again, one of my favorite parts of it, was Count Floyd. That was like a show within the show.
Well, it was cool too because even though Joe came for all the recording sessions for Rebus and the other characters did, he came and just hung out with us. We shot all those Count Floyds in 3 days.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
And my friends Don Doherty and Kent Melton and I just hung out with him because the great thing about Joe is he really is a big fan of shitty monster movies. So we just sat around on the set the whole time talking about all of our favorites and just laughing like crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
Joe, I think, even though I have my favorites from SCTV, because Joe is not a typical actor, and he always kind of looks like a guy caught in the headlights no matter what he's doing on camera.
The eyes.
He's the funniest guy in this. Yeah. He's the guy that kind of, you get the sense that he just kind of walked in not knowing what kind of job he was getting. But I know he was always an intentional actor. But he acts the least like an actor anybody would ever be.
I mean, going SCTV, Guy Caballero is one of my favorites, and I love the Count Floyd story. How Floyd Cannonbear, Count Floyd is his alter ego. I think that's.
Well, we had that same situation in San Diego. We had a local horror hostess named Mona Lisa, who was really hip and really sexy. And when I was working with Comic-Con in the early days, we'd go down to that station to promote it. And here's the lady that played her. She was the weekend news desk person for the station named Lisa Clark. And she wasn't wearing a mask or any weird makeup. It was obvious to her. She was an attractive young woman. Yeah. I mean, older than me. But, so the whole time she's showing us kind of like gritting her teeth because she's on the station. And I'm going, boy, I've always loved Mona Lisa. I think you're great. She's like, I'm not Mona Lisa. It's like, of course you're Mona Lisa. But his thing was, in the early 60s, her sign-off was happy hallucinations, honeys. And she did the same shtick way into the 70s when we were all really having hallucinations. She was really on top of things.
Yeah. I actually have one more question, then probably should wrap it up because it's almost 11 on our end here.
You need to start not sleeping for the next one.
Yeah, I know. Actually, earlier before we went on, we were talking. I had some trouble sleeping. He's like, "Oh, you should have got on MeTV." But speaking of MeTV, I kind of heard a little rumor. I watch a lot of stuff on there, and I heard there was a character that was based on you in Dragnet.
No, but my classmates thought I was. That was the Crimson Crusader who stole all the movie posters of superheroes. Yeah, when that came out, I was in high school, and everybody said, "I didn't know you got away with stuff like that." And that was he was kind of chubby, pathetic-looking guy.
Yeah,
so, I could see why people.
Yeah.
By the way, this is not bad. I figured I'm going to be trapped indoors so long. I'm actually growing a mustache I haven't had since 1982, just to see what I look like. Because by the time we're unleashed, my hair will be down to my shoulders. So don't think it's bad. Don't think your camera's doing something bad. No, it's me doing it.
No.
Anyway, thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun.
No, this has been truly one of the best ones we've done.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back. I'm sure you have more stories. We didn't even touch upon you working for Sonic. We didn't, during the first Sonic, we didn't touch upon a bunch of stuff that we could really go into. So,
well, when you've run out of interesting people, come on back.
All right. Well, thanks again. I'm sure everybody had a great time. There was great questions from our audience out there.
Thanks to everybody that called in.
Yeah.
We had a really nice turnout, so thank you again.
Yes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Michael and Mike. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
It was an honor to chat with you tonight. Truly.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And now I'm intentionally going to close off.
All right. Have a great night.
Have a good night, Scott. Thank you again.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
So,
hold on.